Hello, I'm Clinton from the EasyDIYseries.com. Today we're going to build ourselves a modular wall to run along the front of my property adjacent to the main road. So you've got to first ask yourself the question, why would you go for a modular wall over a brick wall? Well, there's one main reason, and that is it's nearly half the price if you do it yourself. It also looks very similar to a brick or block wall if you render it at the end and then paint it. And also it has very excellent soundproof qualities, just like a brick or block wall, much better than wood or metal. Okay, we're going to break this project into phases as always. We're going to plan the project. It's very important. This project's all about planning. As I say, 2/3 planning and 1/3 actually doing the job. Then we're going to buy the parts and then we're going to do the actual install itself. So let's get going. So the first step in planning is you need to understand, do you have any local council compliance requirements or standards that you need to follow when you assemble your modular wall. So there's two main ways of finding out. You can simply go to your council website. Usually there's quite an extensive detailed list of information that you can read through, or you can just pick up the phone, give them a call, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to help you out if you've got any issues on your property. Another quick tip to help you before you actually start digging your holes for your posts, there's a free service in Australia called Dial Before You Dig. You basically pick up the phone, call them, and what they do is within a half a day they send you all the utility, power, sewage plans specific to your property, so you can see where you're going to dig. Will you have any unpleasant surprises? But hopefully not. Okay, let's move into the design itself in the planning phase to design your wall. Now, to plan or design your modular wall in detail, you need to provide a dimensional drawing of your modular wall to the supplier. What I mean by that is simply on a piece of paper, you need to measure your space where your modular wall is going to go end to end, and you need to draw that on grid paper or normal paper, and you will then provide that to the supplier. The supplier will then provide back a quote, which will naturally have the price of your modular wall, but it will also have a 3D model drawing of what you need for your modular wall. At that point, you need to approve the drawing and quote, pay a small deposit, and then after that, the supplier will provide a more detailed drawing of your wall, which is actually quite important to complete the planning phase of your project. Why I say that is if you've got standard 2.4, 2.7 length panels, it's not so simply saying 2.4 plus 2.4 plus 2.4. You have posts in the middle, so you need to add your panel length plus your post in the middle plus your panel length plus your post in the middle. So the supplier can actually provide this next level of detail for you, because you will need this when you're actually doing the install to know where to dig your post holes. So if you're installing your modular wall on flat land, your plan will be very simple. But if you have a gradient or slope on your land and you need to cut the bottom panels of your modular wall, obviously your plan will be more complicated. So let's cover first the simple plan. So if your land is flat, you want a 1.8 meter high wall, you will just use 2 900 high panels, and that will give you 1.8 meter sections all the way along. If you want a 2.1 meter high wall, well then you'll use a 900 panel, a 1200 panel, and that will give you 2.1 meters high, and that will be on your flat land all the way along. So let's talk a little bit more in detail about how we measure a slope, because this is obviously more complicated and will impact what you actually buy from your supplier. To measure your slope, just follow the calculation method as described in your supplier instruction manual you received. That is okay when you're buying the panel parts from the supplier in the planning phase. What I want to quickly show you is a more practical, thorough method of ensuring you've measured your slope correctly, which you will do later in the install phase of the project once your posts are installed. So this will just ensure later that you double check and you don't mess up your panel cuts for your slope and have to buy them again. So for this more practical method, which you will double check later, your posts are concreted in place for your wall, but your panels have not yet been installed. So what you need, if you're doing a 1.8 meter high wall, this will be your first reference post at 1.8 meters. So from the ground level to the top of the post, we want 1.8 meters. What we then need to do, we need to use a builder's string line, which we will run from our reference post across to our next adjacent post. This is where we'll also hang our little spirit level, and while we use this, we need to make sure that that string line post to post is perfectly level, balanced, so we have a straight top, but we cater for the rake of the slope at the bottom. So as we head across from the 1.8 meter reference post to the adjacent post where there's a rake or slope in the land, what we have above the builder string line, we have about 23 millimeters as explained in the instruction manual to accommodate for the post cap, plus the 900 of the standard top panel, and then from the bottom of the 900 panel to the ground is the cut of your 1200 panel. As mentioned, it's your 1200 panel which compensates for the slope or gradient. So in this example, we have 23 plus 900, 923 plus whatever this bottom measurement is, gives you the height of your second post, and it tells you the height that you need to cut your 1200 panel. So we have 1040, which means one side of my 1200 panel needs to be 1040 high compared to my reference side of 1.8 meters, which is 900 high. You draw a line from one side of your 1200 panel at 900 to 1040, use a circular saw, cut your panel, and that will accommodate for your rake or sloping land. This method is followed for all sections of your modular wall, because we need to remember that your slope may change or be different. So this obviously assists with any mistakes or discrepancies in your initial calculation. So we've finished with our planning phase. We know exactly what our design is. You've sent that to the company and they have provided a list of parts that you need. The great thing is they do the hard work for you. You don't need to work out quantities or anything like that. From your design, they'll supply everything and deliver it to you. So now that we're about to enter the buy project phase of this project, let's have a closer look of the details of what actually you're going to get from the shop. Firstly are the panels. They come in standard 900 and 1200 high panels, and the reason for this, if most of us go for a 1.8 meter high fence, if you have a perfectly flat surface, you would just have two 900 panels. But if you have a gradient or slope, usually you have a 900 at the top and you have a 1300 at the bottom, which you will cut to cater for your gradient. So the panel itself, you have 2 fiber cement sheets with polystyrene in the middle. And the polystyrene is really, that's where you get your sound barrier effect. What you also get, you get a bottom capping, which you can see over here. This bottom capping gets fitted to the bottom of the panel, because obviously that's going to be closest to the ground between your 2 posts. You also have a top capping. You do get flush mounted top cappings which fit over the top. Depends on the finish that you want, but this one goes across the top like that and actually gives quite a nice effect. These are the posts which will be supplied from the shop. They're usually longer than required, which we'll need to trim to size, which I'll show you later with the angle grinder. And these are the post caps, which you'll put on the very end once your panels are on. With your parts that get delivered, they supply any screws that you need, some silicone and some liquid nails, which will all be very clear in the instructions. So about the instructions, just follow them step by step. It's very important. And obviously for this project you'll need a little bit of DIY skills. So let's go to the do phase, do the actual install. Are there any specialized tools required to do this front fence? First you need a circular saw. What's important to note, you can use a general purpose blade. One that cuts wood is more than adequate. That's obviously to trim your panels to fit between the posts, both height and width also. You'll also need your trusty cordless screwdriver to obviously screw on any screws. At the very end, when you trim down your post heights before putting on your post caps, you'll need an angle grinder just to trim off the top to get the perfect height of your posts. Also need some good working horses, just so you can put your panels on top when cutting it to get a stable surface for your circular saw. You need a spirit level, some bricklayer's line or string so you can achieve a perfect level. And this is a very clever and cheap little spirit level which you hang onto the string itself, which is quite handy. And last but not least, your set of protective gear to wear when doing your cutting. So the very first thing you need to do when you start to do the install of your modular wall is you need to determine where the boundary is of your property. So this is only obviously necessary if your modular wall is on a boundary like this is, it's adjacent to a road. So there's 2 ways of determining your boundary. You can either hire a surveyor, pay them a fee, and they'll come in and they'll tell you exactly where that boundary line is. Or if you do have your contract of sale, usually has a site plan in there, and sometimes it's obvious where that boundary line is, like in this example in my house. So then what you would then do to be safe, you would then do your modular wall probably about 5 or 10 centimeters in from that boundary line to ensure that you're still compliant. So the next thing you got to do when your boundary is clear is you need to run a string line using builder string. So this string line will obviously determine where your boundary is, but it's also used to align the fronts of your posts. So when you dig your holes and concrete in your posts, you'll line it up with your string line to ensure that your wall is dead straight when you've finished. Now to install your posts for your modular wall, I'm going to talk you through step by step on how to install the posts in concrete. But if you want to see an actual example, please visit my website www.EasyDIYseries.com, refer to the retaining wall DIY video, and you'll see an actual example of it happening. So let's start. Step number one in the post install is to ensure that your holes are dug to the plan which is provided by the modular wall supply. So what you will do, you will mark out your post hole spacings. You can use some spray paint or something just to ensure that you know where to dig. So to dig the holes, we have 1.8 meter high posts, which means to comply to the country standards, we need to go approximately 600 underground. Please refer to your local country standards to ensure that they are met, but in Australia, it's about a third of the post height under the ground. This means it's almost impossible to dig it with a post hole shovel or one of those clamp tabs. You can do it, but I'd rather recommend you hire a post hole auger or digger to actually dig the holes for you. So these posts are about 300 wide, which means your post holes need to be about 400 in diameter. So when the post hole auger, when the person comes in to dig your holes for you, it's almost like a corkscrew effect. It will dig your hole, pull up the soil, and the holes will be dug to plan. Once the holes are dug, you then take your posts and you put them into each post hole. So now before you actually concrete these post holes in, you need to make sure that the posts are perfectly on a level surface, both on the vertical and the horizontal axis. So what you do, you put your post in the post hole, you brace it with pieces of wood which you can nail or screw into the post itself later, and you obviously use a spirit level to ensure that your post is level on all axes. So your braces are in place, your posts on the post hole, and you're ready to concrete. So now for concreting, we use a post hole post mix, which is a pre-mixed concrete where you just need to add water. Before you actually put this post mix into the hole, you need to take some water, just in a watering can. You water the hole around the post, and now why you do that is if you don't do that, when you pour your concrete in and your water on top, the water will just be absorbed by the surrounding ground. So what it does, it saturates the wall of the hole. So then when you put your concrete in, the water on top is absorbed by the concrete and it can cure properly. So what do we have? We have a braced post inside the hole. We open up our bag of post-mix concrete. We pour it around. For every 20 kg bag of concrete, you use, it says on the instructions, about 2 liters of water. You pour it on top of the concrete and it will absorb itself into the concrete. Wait about 10 minutes each, but for a 400 ml hole, I used about 4 bags of post-mix concrete per post. Also, before you move on to installing your panels on the post, before you put any load on the post, leave it for overnight or so, just to ensure that the concrete has cured and it's ready to install the panels. These are the brackets where the panels will sit on. Look at the opposite one. Now the reason we turned it over is the circular saw blade is not deep enough to cut one side. So you just flip it over, measure again, and you're good to go. Now we're just inserting the joiners into the bottom panel so you can lower the top panel and it should connect nicely. The other panel. Now that all the panels have been mounted into the posts, it's now time to finish them off with the post top caps and the top channels. So to mount the channels and the post top caps, you need some fast quick set glue. This is just liquid nails, some low-coat glue that sets quite quickly. It needs to be water-based, because if it's not water-based, it will melt the polystyrene in the center of the panel. So what you need to do, you need to use your glue, put a blob every 30 centimeters along the channels, and for the post top caps, you just line the inner wall. A little bit hot in Brisbane today. I shouldn't be complaining. Well, they have hot then cold. Check it with the spirit level to make sure it's all balanced. Before we put our post cap on, it's worth mentioning that if you have any electrics or lights or lamps that you're going to mount on your posts, on the side of this channel there's a space, so you run your wire, your cable, through the side space and down and out your holes. Obviously you need an electrician to connect it all up to be compliant. Let's go. Top channel and cappings all complete. Looks awesome, very happy with that. Now I just need to finish it off with some render, textured coat potentially, or even just some paint. Well, I hope this video helped. I had fun, I'm sure you will also. So please remember to like my video and donate to my charity at the bottom of my webpage.